Last week, we looked at the power of prayer. We saw how powerful prayer is, how important it is, because it relies on God's ability, not on our ability. We have to remain connected to Him to have the power of prayer. And so today, I want to look at the process of prayer. It's a little different. Now, I'm not going to pretend to give you a method of praying that'll make your prayers work, but this is a kind of an idea, a mindset to help that we need to get in when we pray to hopefully help us become more effective as we lift these thoughts to the Lord. Because typically, what we do is we throw up these quick one-line prayers like, oh, God, help me on this test. God, will you heal this person? God, I need strength today. Or bless this food. We throw those things out there, and those are good requests. There's nothing wrong with those at all. They're valid. They're worthy of being said. So don't get me wrong there. And if we're following what First Thessalonians tells us and praying continually, then we will be doing those kind of things. But we've done that, and we've relied on those small prayers so much that maybe we've gotten the idea that that's what prayer is. Prayer is this short, one line, one way type of thing. And there's so much more to prayer. It's so much deeper than that. And so as we look at prayer, we're going to look to the ultimate teacher, which is Jesus. And we're going to look at what he gave us in the model prayer today. Now, it's important to realize before we get into the model prayer that Jesus had prefaced this with some things that we shouldn't do. He begins to tell us that we should not be like those people who stand out on the street corner raising their hands and raising their voices praying so that people can see them and think that they're spiritual, think that they're religious by doing their prayers openly like that. But then we're also told that we shouldn't just pray by repeating a mantra or a chant like prayer, just repeating over and over and over again, thinking we're going to be heard by those many words, but that's not how it's supposed to be. And he goes on to tell us after that we need to take time out, go into a quiet place, and spend time alone with God praying. So he gives us this list of things not to do in the process of our prayers, but then he begins to tell us what to do. You take some time out, go into a quiet place alone, and spend time with God in prayer. We tend to call this like our quiet time. For many years, at least, that's what it's been called. But just spending time alone, because that's the example that Jesus set for us. We saw in Luke 5:16, yet he often withdrew to deserted places and prayed. So he took time out, went out to these places and prayed. So let's look at the model prayer in Matthew 6, starting in verse 9. Therefore, you should pray like this: Our Father in heaven, your name be honored as holy. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. And do not bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Now here's a synopsis of what we see in that model prayer. First of all, give God his due. Give him praise. When you address God, acknowledge who he really is. Our Father in heaven, your name be honored as holy. So give him glory. Acknowledge who you are speaking to. Maybe it's just a reminder for you, but it's a good thing to do. And then we see that we need to put his will first. Not our desires, but his will, his kingdom. So your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So we're talking about asking for God's will in whatever we pray about. Then we see that we ask for things that we need. Give us today our daily bread. nothing crazy and extravagant. Give us today our daily bread. Then we also see in this model prayer that we cannot ask God to do for us what we refuse to do for others. And forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. We must forgive our debtors if we expect God to forgive us. Then we see to continue to ask for protection and for God's guidance in our lives. Don't bring us into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. So again, this is not a specific list or a specific formula that you can follow, but it's a good way of getting us to know where our heart should be when we approach the Lord in prayer, making sure that we're approaching Him from the right perspective. So put God first. The first thing you should do, acknowledge who He is. Acknowledge that He is Lord over everything in our lives, everything in the world. So give Him His due. Acknowledge Him. Thank Him for the things He's already done for you, for the fact that He hears you. Give Him thanks for the way He's answered prayers in the past. Then you can start your petitions. Ask for the things that you need. And again, we don't see frivolous things here. Praying for what you need, praying for your daily bread, not praying that God will give you a pantry that's overflowing with food, lest you put your trust in your storage of food in your pantry instead of in the Lord. Pray for what you need. Then when you're done petitioning Him, acknowledge that He is the one who's in control. It's His will that needs to be done. You know, this isn't just God trying to have an ego trip. That's not what this is about. Because when we acknowledge that He is in control, when we acknowledge that He's the one who can help us, He's the one who can forgive us, He's the one who can protect us, when we do that, we're recognizing and we're remembering who He really is. And so that helps us get in the correct mindset to lift up prayers, petitions, thanksgivings, and intercessions for others or for ourselves. So I want you to try that. I want you to think about that and try that the next time you pray. The next time you go to the Lord in prayer, start off acknowledging who He is. That He is Lord of all. He is all powerful. He is your creator. Acknowledge that. Tell Him that. Then thank Him for the things that He's already done, for the ways He has heard you in the past and has already answered, for the fact that He does hear and answer. Thank God. Ask for His will to be done in your life and for His will to be done in the prayers that you're about to lift up to Him. Then go ahead and ask. Go ahead and lift up those prayers. And then end by acknowledging His will, not your will. His will in all things. You know, maybe this will be a good habit and become a good habit as you practice it to where you can always remember this. But at the very least, it is a good reminder for a while of whom you're talking to and whom you're approaching in prayer. That'll help keep things in perspective. Guys, a big part of the process of prayer is having the right perspective. God's first. His will is first. And then we ask.